Welcome, Virgo, to your in-depth weekly astrology overview and zodiac forecast for week commencing the 15th of June for the ascendant, the sun, or the moon. Going to share the big themes of the week ahead first of all. On screen is your event chart on Monday. I'll unpack that. Always a powerful backdrop. I'll then go through each of the influences in detail, and by the end of the video, giving you a clear picture of what's upcoming in terms of your energy, work, relationships, or finances. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now to help it to continue to thrive. But please also click or tap the bell notification symbol. So it's a week which begins with a new moon in the most visible part of your chart, your connection to the world at large, the 10th house. But the host, Gemini, very much to do with fast communication. The moon there, not at her best. And also we have Uranus in the house for the first time on a Gemini new moon for 77 years. So that's a really big deal as we come into this week. But over the last year and a half, the nodal axis has been very powerful for you personally, Virgo, because the south node's been in your sign, the north in your opposite sign, and they are T-squaring Uranus as we come into this week. So I think Uranus is going to be extremely important for you, not just this week, not just to when the nodes switch on the 26th of July, the true nodes, but also over the next year because we've got two more lunar eclipses across your sign and Pisces, which are going to be connecting to Uranus in a T square in a very powerful way. We've also, however, got at the start of this week, Mars forging a great link to your ruler Mercury, which is now in its pre-retrograde shadow, but Saturn in a much more challenging one. What's that about? And then Venus, the planet of relating, but also of money, has moved into a more reflexive part of your chart, but does still forge some very intriguing links. Now, Chiron, the so-called wounded healer, switches into your fellow Earth sign of Taurus on Friday for the next 3 months. How will that play out for you? And then, as the cosmic curtain comes down on this week, we do have the solstice. Now, in the north, it's the summer, the south, it's the winter. But in terms of astrology, it is the summer solstice because it's a Mediterranean construct and it is based on the seasons. And it ushers in cardinal quadrant 2, the next 13-week segment of the year, and the sun's move into the nurturing protective sign of Cancer. But for you, that's very much about your social interaction. So on the screen now is your event chart. And whoever I do a reading for, I'm always drawn to the planet which is most northerly. And for you, it is Uranus. But the intriguing thing about Uranus is because you're a sign that appreciates um, structures, uh, being very routine, getting things done in a very efficient way. But Uranus is in the most visible part of your chart, and Uranus can be about change and it can be very provocative. So it may be that things are changing around where you work, or it may be you're changing within you about what you want from your connection to the world. And if you're going with the flow on that, the fact that Uranus is forging a terrific link to Pluto, the planet of evolution, in the part of your chart that has an echo of Virgo, of practicalities, suggests that something can, on the back of this new moon, which sees the sun and the moon combining in the most visible part of your chart, can prime up an opportunity for you over the next month to picture a new role, do a fantastic presentation, have an interview, or if you work for yourself, draw some new and influential custom to you. But what could be challenging that? Well, really, I think it's Uranus's link to the nodal axis because your appreciation of routines is something that gives you a sense of regularity and rhythm. Totally understandable. But that's also in your own sign. So that's about your identity. The North Node, on the other hand, is very much about the emotional and spiritual dimension, and that's in your seventh house, your direction of travel around relationships. So whether it's what you're used to in terms of your personal routines, what you're seeking as far as relationships, Uranus can be a disruptor. It may be that someone is going to come along who sees things very differently to you and in some ways sets up or lays down the gauntlet, sets up a challenge which affects how things have been, particularly over the last 18 months. The other thing to say is that Mercury, the ruler of the sign of Gemini, and of course your ruler too, is afflicted by Saturn. And that's in the part of your chart to do with longer term finances or shared resources, or perhaps where you need to evolve. And Saturn can, of course, create resistance. Maybe it's around the relationships you've got professionally. If you work in an environment where it may be that you like the colleagues, but not the environment of the actual organization or the demands of the bosses. But intriguingly, Mercury also forges a fantastic link to Mars. So if you are up to making something change, going with the flow, being a bit more independent, then Mars and Mercury can certainly make it happen. Also, Jupiter, the planet of opportunity, links back to the lunation in a very constructive way. So for most of us, they say don't mix business with pleasure. But I think a lot of businesses run on goodwill, and particularly smaller businesses. So you're working with people that you may have not started as being friends, but you develop a rapport because you're spending a lot of time with one another. So the people watch out for one another's backs or cover each other if there's a funeral someone needs to go to or childcare. Those are the relationships that are the bedrock of most of the way we interact. But it's interesting that Venus has now moved into your most private sector. And if you aren't enjoying a relationship, the fact that Venus is in a sextile to Uranus, whether it is a professional one or a personal one, that can give you food for thought about what to do. But equally, it could see you attracted to someone, perhaps a dazzling person at work. It may be someone you're finding more mysterious, but actually more meaningful. Or later in the week, as it comes into an opposition with Pluto, maybe there is a kind of tension between you and someone at work. You may not even like them, but there's something about them that you may find very attractive, and that could actually be very annoying, but at the same time, quite compelling. That is possible. But what about Chiron moving on Friday? Well, it's moving to join up initially with Mars in that ninth house. If you've had a thought, I have shared about this theme with Chiron, that you didn't get the knowledge you needed when you were younger, whether it was going to college, whether it was technical training, whether it was professional training, and you've had to learn at the sharp end. Don't underestimate the experience you have, but it may be that if there is a wound as you see yourself, Chiron gives you a window of opportunity over the next 7.5 years, the initial 7.5, pardon me, the initial 3 months here, to really work at that. And you might apply for a course, you might do something that gives you a real boost, and good for you if so, but also don't underestimate that being a practical earth sign, you make things work. And it's that appreciation of what functions that you shouldn't underestimate. So don't be comparing yourself to others academically, because that's something that maybe that Chiron can tease into the open over the next 3 months. But that brings us to the solstice, the sun moving into Cancer. It's a cardinal sign, so it's very much about leadership, but for you, it's the 11th house. Now, of course, initially it is going to join up with Mercury and Jupiter, but when it arrives, it does link back to Chiron. And therefore, if you connect or collaborate with people that are very nurturing or very encouraging or tell you the things you could work on, and at the same time remind you of the talents you have, those relationships could be very important over the next 3 months. I'm going to summarize those 4 areas of energy, work, relationships, and finances next, Virgo. just to slash the price of my personal horoscope reports. For many years, it was buy two, get 30% off. Because of the cost of living increases, I wanted to make them as available to people as possible. So now it's buy one, get three for the price of one. The one you pay for is your life roadmap report, the most important document any of us can read because it helps to break down our personalities into more component parts. And through understanding those better, we can make better decisions. And then the free ones are your 12 months transit forecast, giving you the opportunity to know when to make the right moves over the next year, but also your draconic soul karmic analysis, which is a brilliant way of looking at astrology, life, and ourselves. But particularly if the North Node for you isn't late in Pisces or early in Aries in your natal chart, please see below for more. Now, if you've yet to watch your Gemini new moon video from a purely Virgo viewpoint, that's on the screen. If you've yet to watch your Chiron 50-year return forecast on the screen. If you'd like to work with me one-to-one, it'd be an absolute pleasure. I work with people the world over. Please see my testimonials below. And if you've yet to take advantage of my free daily written horoscope, find your device each morning for your early day celestial pit stop. You can sign up for that below too. So to summarize, energy. It's an interesting one because, pardon me, Mercury, your ruler, can influence the nervous system, and it is in a water sign, which can kind of impair the cool detachment that Mercury enjoys. If there is a friend or a situation in your life where maybe it isn't working for you around those future hopes, or perhaps it's around money around that situation, that could be a bit draining, I feel. But with Chiron moving into your ninth house, if you have got any health issues, some astrologers see Chiron as very much a physical influence. I see it mostly as being much more of a psychological one. But if you have got some, Chiron moving into the ninth house can help you to download more information, get better informed, and that can be really good. Professionally, if you're doing something you really enjoy, the new moon in the glittering 10th house, in the sign of communication with Uranus in the mix, can see you come up with lots of brilliant novel ideas, and it may really hit home, particularly with Jupiter, the planet of fortune, in a great link with that lunation. If, however, you're in a situation that's changing, you've got an unpredictable boss, they're bringing in technology at pace, and you don't really know where you stand with it, that could be very unsettling. As far as your financial situation concerned, Saturn in that eighth house does suggest that anything to do with shared resources or where you're wanting to be perhaps a bit more speculative and entrepreneurial may need some care. But I also feel that you have a chance with the angle between once the sun moves at the end of the week and moves into Cancer, that's your 11th house. And the 11th house can actually be very fortunate. And it is going to link itself to the nodes in a very constructive way. So I would think that if you're working in an environment or you've got ideas for yourself that you're feeling very inspired about, be positive about what can come from that. But as far as relationships are concerned, if you're not happy, Venus being in the 12th house could see you wanting to end something, but it can also see a secretive connection, something that's a bit clandestine, or it may see you drawn towards someone through work and not quite know what to do in an existing relationship. If you can travel together and do something that really connects you to the outer world, that's very, very good indeed. It's been a pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me, Virgo. Have a great week. All the best and goodbye.